right, welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Evie Rinkowitz. I'm an ecology professor at FIT in the Department of Science and Math. I'm also the current faculty advisor for the Biodesign Challenge program at FIT. The Biodesign Challenge is an international competition based here in New York. It's been a program since 2016, and FIT has been a big player in this program since that time, winning the first year summit with Team AlgaeKnit. And in 2019, Team Florifer won the Stella McCartney Prize for Sustainable Fashion. And from my perspective, working with the biodesign students, I'm always really amazed and impressed with the ideas they come up with, the innovations that they design, and how eager they are to learn as much as they can from scientists and designers to develop their projects. So I'm really happy to be able to introduce this panel today. And I'm going to turn it over to Veena, who's going to be the moderator for today's panel.
Amazing. Thank you, Evie. Can everyone hear me? All right. Okay, we're going to switch over to, So hi, everyone. My name is Veena. First and foremost, I wanted to give a thank you to Deanne and Evie and Karen and the rest of the team for hosting today's webinar, as well as putting together this wonderful series of events around circularity and sustainability in fashion. I'm excited for the conversation that we're going to have today. So a little bit about myself. I'm the program director of the Biodesign Challenge, an international education program and competition that pairs high school and college students with artists, designers, and biologists to envision, create, and critique new applications for biotechnology. So this year we have students from 51 classrooms in 20 countries using design thinking to build a more sustainable future. We've had thousands of students come through our program to create stories, art pieces, and even commercial products that address sustainability in areas including architecture, fashion, medicine, agriculture, and so much more. So our aim is to merge science and design and make it more accessible to learners from all disciplinary, cultural, and socioeconomic backgrounds. We're working hard to give everyone equal opportunity to participate in the conversations around this emerging discipline that is bridging design, art, and biodesign. Today's panelists are both alumni of the Biodesign Challenge and will be talking about their experiences working across disciplines and how participating in the challenge has shaped their approach to their personal practices and their careers. And now a warm welcome to Tessa and Mitchell. Thank you both for joining us today and for speaking with me. Let's maybe start off with a very simple question. Could you tell us both, for our audience, what your focus is? What were you studying at FIT when you found the Biodesign Challenge? Why did you choose to join? And tell us about your project as well, what you focused on for the competition.
Yeah, well, thank you, Veena, for having us. I'm really excited to be here and share a little bit about my insights with biodesign. So as Veena mentioned, my name is Mitchell Henderson, and I received my associates in fashion design from FIT and my bachelor's in international trade and marketing with minors in ethics and sustainability and international politics. I first learned about biodesign while taking an ecology and environmental course from Evie. I then later became involved while participating in a designing with emerging materials class at FIT, where my team and I conducted a research project aimed at creating a more sustainable solution to spandex, which is derived from petroleum. So we looked to nature for inspiration and found that there is an elastic protein found in the adductor muscle attached to oyster shells. The adductor muscle is typically left over after a consumer eats the meat of the oyster. And so thankfully, several NYC restaurants were generous enough for us to collect the post-consumer oysters so we could take them back to the lab and use a hot alkali method to extract and isolate that protein. Once the protein was isolated, we combined it with an enzyme to create a fiber-like substance extruded into a warm water bath. We then returned the oysters back to the Billion Oyster Project, where they were replanted in the New York City harbor to live again and promote the habitat of our local estuaries. Unfortunately, the pandemic did hinder some of our research and development, so we don't have any workable fiber at this time, but we're still really excited by the research that we were able to do.
Amazing. Tessa, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much. for having me and welcoming us to this summit. I'm really excited to share a little bit more as well. So yeah, to give a bit of background, um, at FIT, I was studying fashion design and in particular knitwear focus within my bachelor's program. And at the time, I was really interested and pretty naive probably in thinking that how can you relate textiles to the world around you? How do you look at different disciplines and educational systems to collaborate with design through engineering or through science? And I was kind of like bashing my head against the wall to try to figure this out, and basically alone, like in my dorm room, trying to be just study and learn everything that I could. And um, went a little bit nuts, but I was lucky enough that, in this kind of process and project that I was kind of working towards pretty vaguely, actually one of my professors, Asta Skosier, introduced me to the Biodesign Challenge. And I kind of just felt like my whole world had opened up, and that there was this giant community that also was thinking similarly and much more complex fashion than I was. And so I was connected as well with, our co-founders, our team, working with um, Asta and Theanne, with Alex and Aaron, and another student, Jian. And with that, we kind of tried to look at the fashion ecosystem and see, where we stood as designers. Um, and, trying to understand that unfortunately the fashion supply chain is not going anywhere tomorrow. And so if we have to work inside of this box of fast fashion and mass consumption, is there a way for us to look at the raw materials that we're starting with in order for the end products to live inside of a circular economy? And so we kind of mapped out these rules that we wanted to follow, and ended up exploring and experimenting with a ton of different powders and polymers that you could just get at the grocery store or wherever that was, and found this really awesome biopolymer that comes from kelp. And, from that, we were able to create this proof of concept, which, at the time was really more like a ramen noodles, but actually, was really exciting for us because it meant that, by combining this, rapidly renewable organism with the practices and engineering that fashion fibers or textile fibers go through, we were able to create something that was viable. So yeah, that's how we got started.
I love that. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing screen so everyone can see the three of us for now. Let me just move us this way. This is really fun. Okay, so let's talk about, so that was just, what your projects were.
Oh, we lost you.
Oh, you can hear me now. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So your projects are just one part of the work that you both do. So let's maybe move on to what are you working on right now? What are some of the things as designers that you're excited about, that you're working through? And Mitchell, you mentioned that, we are in a pandemic. So what are the things that you're capable of doing right now? Either of you can go first, whoever's ready.
Yeah, I can jump in. So, since the Biodesign Challenge, I think, as a team, we've been really fortunate and have taken this from a project that, of course, was fueled and kind of crafted under the Biodesign Challenge, but is now kind of turned into a company where we have 14 employees and we have labs in Brooklyn, which is so exciting. So at least for me, to be honest, I've gone from a role as a designer and an artist, which is something that I always said that I would never give up, to applying some of those techniques and problem solving methods into trying to create a commercialized product, which is what we're doing now.
Cool. And Good, good.
Yeah, and then for me, unfortunately, when the pandemic did hit, my teammates and I scattered a bit. Our research and development was in its pretty early stages, so there was still a lot of lab work that needed to be done that we no longer had access to. But in the meantime, I've been working on other projects as well. I've been working at FIT and with Deanne, and so one of the most recent projects that I've been helping with is part of an upcoming exhibit called 6,876 Kilometers, where I recently completed a zero waste garment as well as some other very talented designers that will be showcased digitally. And it's pretty significant. And the reason why the project is called 6,876 kilometers is because that is the distance from the garment district in Manhattan to the Association of Women's Tie-Dyers in Modia, Kindia. And it's also the distance traveled by foot every 6 seconds by women and children collecting water. The project focuses on education and empowerment as climate action, and brings together a global community to create beautiful natural textiles and uses them to create zero waste garments. So it brings transparency to a global fashion supply chain that works on building voices and incorporating often exploited communities.
Very cool. That's, yeah, that's so inspiring. So I'm going to go off script a little bit. Where can people find that? Where can they watch the or view the exhibition and when?
So right now it is currently being produced right now, so it's not available to view. We are hoping that by Earth Day, so on April 22nd, that it will be available to view. You'll be able to find it through the FIT website. And if anybody has any questions for how to find it, you can get my contact email at the end of this discussion, and I'd be happy to personally share the link with you once it's available.
Amazing, thank you. So I think, you know, we say the word biodesign a lot, and I think those of us that are kind of in the world take for granted that we know what it means, or like we have an idea. So I think maybe let's do, you know, we don't want to make like a dictionary definition or anything. I think the beauty of the word in the biodesign community, the word biodesign, is that each person has their own sort of definition for it and the way that they approach it, and that there's a beauty in that. So I think for the two of you, could you maybe tell me a little bit more about what biodesign means to you and how this definition may have changed when you first started with the Biodesign Challenge, and how it has maybe grown as you continue on in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think perhaps my definition of biodesign isn't the actual definition, but you know, as you said, it just, yeah, what it means to me. And I think it really is founded on this idea of collaboration in so many ways, and inclusivity as well. You know, when you're thinking about not only the collaboration and connection, or, you know, link between literally biology and design, it's really this new mentality of how are you putting together these two things that previously were not matching. And I think that that's something that's so key when it comes to really everything that biodesign is encompassing. So, you know, not only that literal relationship, but also the mental relationship in terms of, you know, how you're able to think about, you know, different topics, different practices, educational platforms, you know, things of that nature, that you're really able to collaborate with different individuals, different organisms, and, you know, build off of this diverse playing field in order to create something that's totally different. And I think in that, you know, it's really creating different mentalities and different connections between things that are able to coexist to an extent.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I agree. I love how you stated that. For me, to be honest, when I first attended my initial biodesign meeting, I had very little understanding of what the meaning was or what the concept of the word biodesign was. So my first initial thought was to relay back to a book that my friend Kate Walls lent to me on biomimicry. And so sort of looking to nature for solutions to solve our world's problems. And while this definitely is an aspect of biodesign, I think that the field of biodesign is so beautiful because of the vastness that it has to offer. So for me, biodesign is about integrating art and science in harmony with nature and our societies. And it's the concept of creating a circular life cycle for whatever you're trying to create. So taking a look at the raw materials that you're inputting to the use of the product all the way until its end of life. And so I think it's just really about like integrating living systems into our daily lives in a way that's harmonious for each other.
I love that. I love that. Yes. Yeah. I think just on biodesign challenges end too, I love that both of you have definitions for yourselves, because the way that our student projects take shape every year tends to drive the way our organization approaches the word biodesign as well, which is really exciting. So, very early on, for me at least, it was very much about science communication and dispelling myths around specific words that you see in synthetic biology and biotechnology, where the phrase genetically modified organism, people have a strong reaction to it, right? Whether it's positive or negative. And so we wanted to make it so that whatever reaction you have to it is an informed version of that reaction, right? So it started off very much for me, like talking about the science and making sure that people with very different backgrounds are talking about the science and are included in that conversation. And I think over the years, it's the student projects have kind of made it so we're really thinking about sustainability as well. Like, how does this fit within the context of circular design and sustainability? So I think both of you have said it so beautifully, and like it proves the fact that we are really following your lead, and the organization is always changing depending on what current and future designers are thinking about.
Yeah.
So
I actually think you brought up something really interesting that I do want to note, and I think is something that, at least was my learning to an extent, which is, learning to communicate the scientific portions of what you're doing and learning from that. But I think, in my opinion, and I guess I'm very biased as a designer, but I think also a really big part of it is educating the science side on design and on the importance of design and the practices and the necessary aspects that are needed to be accomplished, and that science isn't happening in a silo, and it's a mutual educational process. And I think that that's something that's important and maybe not necessarily talked about enough.
Yeah, and related to that, I wanted to ask both of you, like Tessa at Alginate and Mitchell in your current the exhibition that you're working on. What is it like to work across disciplines, right? As designers that are speaking to Tessa, in your case, like chemists and material scientists, right? People that speak different languages than you do. What does that feel like? Like, maybe to make it more specific, like what is one challenge that you've experienced, and what is one like success or like aha moment that you've had?
Yeah, so I can jump in here. For me, the opportunity to participate in biodesign and work across disciplines was really exciting to me, but it was also very nerve-wracking at the same time. So I was in school for fashion design at the time, where I did the Biodesign Challenge. And the thought of doing anything within the realm of science and math was very daunting for me. I'd always been okay at those subjects, but I was studying fashion design. I was happy there in my little niche. But when I started to become aware of the issues around sustainability that were taking place in the fashion industry, it became apparent to me that in order to tackle these issues, we were going to need a multidisciplinary way of thinking about these challenges. And so then the barriers that I kind of put up around me had to be taken down, and they were taken down with the help of my advisors and also my teammates as well, who were also fashion design students. So I came to understand that I'm not limited in what research I can take part in. I think was like a really big thing for me, knowing that I can participate in scientific research as a fashion design student, looking at, like our local estuaries and different things like that. And so I think it's just about sometimes the mindset that people have, and the talents that allow for solutions. That's really interesting, that comes across with working with different disciplines. I think the most exciting aspect for me about biodesign is the way that I'm able to work with people from just across a variety of fields and gather information and collaborate and hear issues that I may have and I may think about on the design side and how that may happen. Like a different issue may come up on the engineering side or the biology side. So I think it allows people from diverse communities to come together to take a look at varying aspects of problems and create their own solutions.
Yeah, love it. Tessa?
Um, yeah, I think that this is a really good question, and it's hard for me to pick because I feel like there's so many challenges. But Mitchell, as I think you were saying, I definitely agree and felt that really daunted by the idea of delving into science and biology in particular, which I have a very fraught relationship with, at least. Um, but I think with that, it's an exciting challenge, and I think Veena, you said it in a way that is kind of how I think about it, which is it's really speaking another language. Different educational systems, different backgrounds are really just different languages and different terminologies. And so, I guess one of the challenges for me is um, learning, accepting, and understanding that I'm not fluent in any of those languages. I'm still not fluent, and I probably will never be fluent. But it's okay to be learning them and to be, taking those steps. And I think, the challenge is really not being afraid to ask questions constantly, and
Yeah.
asking to explain things. And I still do that on a daily basis. And sometimes I get a little embarrassed about it. But at the same time, I think that that's fair for everybody to undertake when they're talking about something that they don't have 5, 10, 20 years of experience in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I definitely think that that's a challenge as well as, sometimes having to learn to decipher things yourself. And, again, accepting that that may take a little bit longer than what you might be used to in other subjects or other areas.
Yeah. So you're putting in just a little bit more work to make sure you understand as you're going. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Um, so, I mean, since we're talking about working across disciplines, let's maybe shift a little bit to working across other backgrounds, right? So, just around diversity and equity and inclusion, as both of you are leaders, right, in the work that you do. In the spaces that you've worked in that are related to biodesign and circularity, I think I follow a lot of people on Instagram who talk about how like sustainability is not accessible, that it is often white people that are have the ability to be able to talk about it, right? So have you how do we ensure that individuals across races, across socioeconomic backgrounds, across different capabilities, abilities, gender identities, that they feel that they can contribute to this conversation around sustainability, and that they feel like it is an issue or like something that is important for them to, and important for us to have them be in that conversation? This is a really hard question, and we know that we're like everyone is thinking about it still, and I recognize that. But I mean, if you both have like examples of work that you've done or work that you've seen, I would love to hear about it.
This question is very multifaceted.
Yeah.
So feel free to let me know all the parts that I missed, 'cause I'm just gonna take it one piece at a time.
Yes, definitely.
But I think, you know, again, going back to the idea of biodesign and this like new languages and new communication styles and channels, I think a really, really big part of it is first, or a part, maybe not first, but, you know, breaking down the barriers of, you know, these educational systems that are very elitist, um, and, you know, typically really shun outsiders, in my
Mm,
opinion. um, and you know, allowing for education and learning to be not only simplified but also shared in a way that, you know, it's not excluding anyone from a certain background without certain experiences. So I think that really comes down to language and, you know, again, that communication and the way that you're allowing it to be shared, and by what means. And then with that, of course, I think, you know, going back to like economics, making things accessible for people that don't have certain privileges, whether that's economically or socially. So, how can you provide either product or education or information or um, mentors or whatever that is in a way that's really genuinely inclusive? Uh,
right.
I don't have the answer for that. I just feel that way.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think the languages is a big thing, right? Just as you translate different languages, you know, you translate a message in different cultural languages. There should be, ethnic languages, I should say, like there should be cultural languages as well, right? That you approach people in the way that they speak. And that should be done by a person that is part of their community already, is just what I think of as well. I agree with what you said. Mitchell, how about you?
Yeah, no, Tessa, I think that was a really great approach to the question. As you said, it's very complex, and I am not going to pretend that I'm the one with all the answers to this question. I think, as you said, you know, the world of academia and sometimes this um, world of knowledge can seem very exclusive and elitist, and it takes a lot of formal education in order to get to these places to have a power and a place to speak your voice. And so I think a way to help combat that is by listening to and raising the voices of the marginalized communities. I think that's essential for there to be any sort of equity and equality within biodesign and really within any field. So by listening to the communities, you know, that your product is going to be affecting or incorporating the voices and concerns of them into your product. And you know, and then access to education is another big one. You know, I was fortunate enough to attend college and to be formally introduced to biodesign in that way, but you know, not
Right.
everybody has the resources to be able to do that. And so we need to be able to figure out ways to help break down those barriers to entry into this field, because there's so many people that have really brilliant ideas. I mean, from high schoolers through college. And so I think by just trying to access those communities across different professional fields and skills with the intention to show that everybody really is welcome here, and that we want you, and that we want your voices, and that, you know, you are the future and we need you for this.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really great way of saying it, and I definitely agree. I think like the idea of resources and having access to that is so important. And you know, I think just from the not only from the individual basis, but from you know, corporations and communities and whoever that is, you know, really acting as a resource. You can use yourself as a tool to help other people and, you know, speak in a way that makes sense and share your information, whether that's in person or online or helping to collaborate with your communities. I think is really important, and there's so many great channels that you can do that on, and I think it's really the individual, it's up to the individual to, you know, have that power to help share and spread and not alienate others, to an extent.
I'm hoping maybe because you both brought up resources, maybe we could jump to that question about are there people as both of your designers, are there people that do inspire you that maybe you could share with our audience too, that maybe they can follow as well? So I think in my example was Green Girl Leah. She has an Instagram account. She is a person of color, and she talks a lot about sustainability and being a person of color. So that intersectionality specifically, she talks a lot about, you know, how sometimes her culture butts heads with sustainability culture, and like breaking down those barriers for people like herself, to think of sustainability as something that is important for her as well, and is important that she contributes to. So yeah, and like you both were talking about, you know, not only showing this through the university lens, right? So she does it on social media, and it's social media for the most part is accessible to most people, if they create an account and follow her. So yeah, if there's someone like that, or an organization, or someone that does those sort of things, that would be great to hear from both of you.
Yeah.
You're more plugged in than I am.
So yeah, one organization that I really have admired and I've done a little bit of work with in the past is the Slow Factory. So they work at the intersection of fashion, sustainability, and social and climate justice. They offer open education courses that focus on the fashion industry, and in the ways in which sort of the colonial structures have been extremely harmful to many of the communities involved in the global supply chain. So yeah, they offer great educational resources and opportunities for growth and education, all taught by some really amazing educators from around the world.
I love it. They're
Uh,
great.
Yeah, you stole my answer a little bit. I was going to post them as well. Um, this question is very hard for me because I'm really bad at names, and now I'm forgetting all of them. Um, can I come back to this?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I could also
And
throw another one too.
Yeah.
So Lauren Singer is a zero waste lifestyle advocate. She's done some TED Talks, and she's also the CEO of Package Free. And so I think her Instagram is Trash is for Tossers. I believe that's also her blog name. But she offers a lot of great personal insight on how to live a zero waste lifestyle, and how to combat, you know, just the excess of the modern world.
Trash is tosser, like the British like swear word tosser. Okay, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, nice, love it.
Trash is for tossers.
That's another great call out. Yeah, wow. I'm like not a very good social media person.
We can compile a list afterwards too, and share it with people if you guys have names, but they're not coming to mind right now.
Yeah, I think just to throw on the zero waste, there's zero waste Daniel, who's really fantastic. I think he's very inspiring just in the design realm and what he's working on, as well as the
Subscribe?
scrap. There we go. Yeah, they're
Scrap.
also in the Army terminal, which is right by our offices. And I think they are doing a great job in increasing the accessibility of fabrics and goods and products, to a wider mass, and that, you know, they're much cheaper and much more accessible than what's available at Mood, and of course, you know, working more sustainably as well.
Amazing. Okay, so we got some resources out there. Hopefully people will check them out. So we have a few people in our audience. If anyone would like to ask a question, we went 10 minutes over already. It's fine. Everything's fine. If you'd like to turn your audio and video on and ask a quick question to either of our panelists or me, I guess, we'd love to hear from you. And while people try and gain the courage, I will ask you both about, you know, we just talked about our relationships with each other as humans. What about non-humans? What about like what is design meant for you both as with the projects that you've done? Like how has that changed your relationship with other species?
Hmm. I think this is actually a very interesting question, and I don't know if it's just more related to my personal evolution or my integration within biodesign. Um, is it a movie? Um, so what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. So I think that I definitely when I started, going to FIT, and so I was like, I'm a city person. I belong in concrete, and this is, who I am. But I think, as I grew and learned more, not only about the importance of biodiversity and sustainability and supporting your local ecologies, I think it became much more necessary for me to be interacting with nature on a much more frequent basis. And, because of that, I definitely have a much greater appreciation just for the small parts of nature around me and making sure that I'm cultivating that as much as possible. So it's nothing crazily profound, but it's definitely a massive shift in my own personality.
I would agree with Tessa there because I know both of our projects work with water species. And so it's those things that you don't really think about all the time, but are constantly around us and are vital in our ecosystems. And so for me, it was kind of learning to think about nature as a tool for growth and how we can work with nature rather than against nature to achieve an end product. And so I think, yeah, for me, just like through my biodesign experience and learning about oysters, and you can eat them, and then they can be replanted, and then they help repair local estuaries, and just how much really nature, plants, animals can offer real benefits to human life as well as their environments around them. So I think, yeah, that was really awesome for me to kind of come to that realization.
Cool. All right, let's maybe start with Cameron. She said she had a question for you all. If you can turn on your video and audio, Cameron.
We believe in you.
Oh, give me a second. This is why we're recording. This will all be cut out. Security? Oh, there we go. Awesome.
There we go. Okay.
Hi. Sorry about that. I had a quick question about like the fashion side of what you're doing. So after you created like, for example, Mitchell, when you created your, is it a textile that you created with the oysters, or like
Yeah,
just
it's a fiber. Just a fiber at this point is what we've been able to develop.
So how would you translate that into like actually possibly creating a fabric and then creating a collection after that? Would you have like people come and work on like creating a fabric, or like how would you go about that?
Yeah, so our plan, and I think Tessa will be able to speak to this much better than I have, as she's done a lot more research and development in regards to AlgaeNet on the exact question. But just a little bit about what we were thinking in terms of scalability is that we were doing research and development. So we wanted to get to a point where we had a workable fiber that was durable and had good tensile strength. So it could ultimately replace the market of spandex. What we wanted to create was not something new altogether, but was to create an alternative to something that already existed. Spandex as a fabric is really great in a lot of ways, in that it is very flexible, so it fits a lot of body sizes, and it's very comfortable, and it's used in a lot of denim wear now. And so we didn't want something that was gonna be so transformative rather than something that could just silently slip into the market and be a much more regenerative and biodegradable solution to something that is derived from petroleum. So maybe Tessa, you can also touch on this in terms of how you expanded Algina into where it is today.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, Mitchell, you're touching on such an important part that I think it's easy even for designers to overlook in that, it's the fibers, or that's filaments or staples that are the core of literally everything that we're doing. And even though it seems literally small, without that, there's none of the textiles that surround us. And without those performance qualities, like you were mentioning, it would literally be impossible. So I know that that's an amazing feat to even get to that point. So I definitely want to call that out. That's super exciting. Um, but yeah, I think, Cameron, as you were saying, there's so many different ways that everybody can and could and might or should go about choosing their creative process. I'm definitely really curious, Mitchell, what you end up going with. Um, I think for us, we have, created fibers, um, and, cut them into staples, spun them into yarns, done some textile construction trials, which have been really exciting. But at the end of the day, we want to be able to elevate and provide designers with the materials that they can do whatever it is that they want to do. So selling to brands or individuals so that, we're not dictating what the possibilities are. And I think that that's really the beauty of design, is to be able to take resources and apply them. And it's my job to help give people those rather than defining the systems for them. So that's kind of the strategy that we're taking. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yes, that does.
Thank you for the question, Cameron. That was really great. And for the pivot back to fashion, too. That was wonderful. Emma, if you still have a question, you can turn your audio and video on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for doing this panel. It's been really interesting. I had a question about the topic of greenwashing in the fashion industry and major brands. I'm seeing you shaking your head. And I just wanted to know if you want to touch on that. I know you're like creating these new sustainable products or materials. Do you see those being scaled up into these massive fashion corporations like H&M or something, or is there a space for sustainability in corporations? I guess I'm asking.
That's a very tricky question. In my perspective, I think it's a yes and no type of answer. And so, I think that when it comes to greenwashing to begin with, of course, that's really a marketing tool for sales and I guess to an extent for consumers. And, I think in order to avoid that, it's really necessary to be extremely detail oriented and considerate of all portions, not only of your own supply chain, but of the following supply chain. And again, of the partners or the customers that you end up working with, whether that's brands or manufacturers. And so I think, when it comes to integrating with these massive, international companies like an H&M or a Zara, whoever that is, I think it's integral to work with them, to be honest, because they're not going anywhere. Maybe they will in 10 years or 20 years, but in the meantime, they still will be producing. And so if they're going to be, give them, again, the tools and resources that they need to do so in a way that at least increases their ability to be sustainable or circular or however you want to define it. And then within that, I think it's also important to go back to the idea of diversity. So I think one material can't solve all the problems, one organism can't solve all the problems, be that natural, synthetic, etc. So, I think to really work, it has to be a collaboration between all of these different new ideas and new materials. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you stated that really well. I would just add transparency is just a really big one in terms of greenwashing. The more transparent a brand is about their supply chain, I think that that is really important, and that it shows you exactly, you know, the inputs and outputs of everything that they're making. Some brands are better about putting out corporate social responsibility plans than others, but if you're looking for signs of greenwashing, or if you're questioning, usually brands will have something on their page if they are concerned about sustainability. But also working with those big international corporations, I would agree with Tessa, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, where it's under sort of these like capitalist markets, they create so much products under the current markets to try to meet these demands of current trends. And so even if our materials are more sustainable, just the amount that people buy and sell and throw away clothing is another issue at hand, that is like another issue that needs to be addressed. So it's this whole, you know, global fashion supply chain where that, you know, we try to focus on these micro issues to help affect the macro, but there's still so much that needs to be done across so many different fields that fall under the fashion industry umbrella.
Yeah, for sure. Total agreement on that.
Thank you, Emma. Could we have Dan go next?
I wanted to piggyback on that question because I think it's actually an important one, right? When we talk about biodesign as a solution for sustainability, sometimes coming up with a new product is the right way to go. Sometimes asking for consumer behavior change or even corporate behavior change is the way to go. And so I was wondering how you balance the two, right? For you to demonstrate that your company is successful, you need to show that you're selling a lot of product. At the same time, the more product you sell, the less sustainable you will be, meaning you're burning more energy for people to consume more stuff, right? Ideally, in a better system, we would own fewer items of clothing, we would wear them more. When they were torn, we would repair them. We don't do that right now. So how do you balance one with the other, right? How do you both be a company that's trying to sell stuff and demonstrate that there's demand for your stuff, but also, on the other hand, shoot yourself in the foot by saying, hey, buy less stuff?
Wow, okay, throwing out the hard ones there, Dan. Um, I think that's a very complex question and something that is really necessary for everybody to be considering. Um, and I think, yeah, as you were saying, you need to have both approaches. And in addition to that, it's also the responsibility uh, of my delivery person, no, of, of all individuals, well, individuals as consumers, individuals as in new materials companies, corporations, manufacturers, to look at the way that they're producing and creating and kind of analyzing the long-term outputs that that's going to have. Perfect timing. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about two different things in my opinion. Oh my God, shut up. Okay, I'll be right back. Excuse
Yeah,
me.
I can maybe jump in here a little bit. And so always happens when working from home. But yeah, so I think that the issue is very complex and multifaceted in a lot of different ways. And so obviously we want corporations to produce less, we want people to consume less, but at the same time, in the interim, there needs to be ways in which that we can minimize and the environmental impacts on the way that we're getting there. So by like creating algae knit, or by creating eco-lasting like as alternatives for biodegradable textile solutions, it's a big step in reducing the environmental impacts. It's not going to get rid of it, and I think that we both acknowledge that. But at the same time, the benefit that it creates on the mission to getting to less consumption is important.
Oh, dang. Okay, there we go. Yeah, Mitchell, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think, to add on to that, um, we're really looking at a couple of different factors all at once. So I think one is, short term versus long term, reality versus optimistic. So I think, on the short term, we need to face the reality that tomorrow things aren't changing. So how do we create solutions now that will have a positive impact? On the long term, I think we have space and time to be optimistic in order to work and push and help to change the mentalities of consumers and corporations and governments to change the actual systems. But that's definitely going to take a much longer time. So, in the meantime, how are we going to act now? And I think that it's the relationship between those things and acknowledgement that they both do exist that needs to happen in order for long term, sustainable growth and change for everybody.
Working with the systems that you're given right now. Yeah. We're getting very close to time, so let's do just 2 more questions if possible. Alex, if you're ready.
I'm so ready. Hi. Hi, Tessa. Hi, Mitchell. So forgive me if you guys answered this already. I guess, I'm starting to notice more and more that when I talk to friends and family and general public, not that I talk to the general public often, we kind of function in this little world that's always thinking about sustainability, at least, the Biodesign Challenge, and probably for Alternate and Eco-Lasting. And it's just always in the back of my mind when I'm making choices at the supermarket or online shopping or something. I'm curious if you have suggestions for just small tweaks that someone should keep in mind, or recommendations that you think are the most important things to consider if you're not super tuned into this world. Because it's a little bit intimidating sometimes, it's like, oh, I'm making bad choices. I have to have a PhD in climate change or something. So I'm curious how it can be a little more accessible for someone who's not thinking about this all the time.
So one thing that I do, for me, I love clothing and fashion, and self-expression has always been a very big aspect of my life. And so at the same time, I know that, creation of new clothing, has high environmental impacts. And so one thing that I've done is really just move to secondhand clothing. I know that's not reasonable for all and for everything, but for the majority, I think that you can find a lot of really unique, fun, basic to wild pieces from secondhand stores such as, Goodwill or Buffalo Exchange or Beacon's Closet here in the city. Or I know I used to work for a local secondhand store in Nebraska for a while too. So I know that they exist out there. And that's a really kind of fun and different way to kind of source clothing. In regards to food supply chain, I know that shopping at local farmers market when they're open is kind of a fun way to get some different groceries and food products. But beyond those 2 things, maybe Tessa has some other options. I'm not sure.
Yeah, for sure. I was definitely going to say secondhand clothing and thrifting is really great. And I think, to be honest, like my personal joke that's probably not that funny is just like I'm thrift store size. Like you don't have to deal with like a specific shop that doesn't fit your body or whatever it is. Like you shop for what fits you and maybe it's cool, whatever. But I think, yeah, that's a really fun way and proactive way as well of putting your money where your values are. So I personally, yeah, that's probably where I get 99.9% of my clothing. But I think, yeah, when it comes to groceries, I mean, I think um, it's also fun to like play a game, at least I do a little bit in the grocery store, of how can I buy all my groceries that have zero plastic or zero packaging on them. And you usually end up with things that are a lot healthier for you too. But I think, at the end of the day, the biggest thing that you can really do is by learning and talking to people and educating yourself and talking about it with other people. I think there's a really excellent How to Save a Planet episode that directly talks about this, I think from last week. So I don't want to misquote them or steal their ideas, but I think, the core message is really, speaking up and, putting your money where your values are.
Amazing. Are you both okay to go 5 minutes over? Is that all right?
That's fine.
Tessa? Okay. Evie, go ahead.
Thanks, guys. My question, I think, is sort of like bringing it back to sort of, what the students in my biodesign class now might be thinking about, or sort of how they might, if they aren't here right now, what they could have asked you. And I've actually gotten questions from my students to sort of, how do I want to say this? What do you maybe think is the most, sorry about the background noise. What do you think is the most successful way to approach learning the biology and the other sciences that you think are necessary in biodesign? Like, are there suggestions for current design students on how to, say, approach these topics? Like you guys said, that maybe weren't like your first, choice, because obviously that wasn't your major, but you sort of figured out a way to make it relate to what you do, or understand sort of what needs to be done or who to ask. From a teacher perspective, I loved that you guys said you ask a lot of questions. I think that, at least from my perspective, that's always the best way to learn more about something, and actually admitting that you don't know everything is a really important part of the process, so that you can figure out how to work with other people with different expertise and things like that. So yeah, I guess so. Like, for the, what would you say to maybe the current biodesign students who are worried about the science part of it? How would you recommend they approach that?
Yeah, for me and my team, how we approach sort of our start into biodesign, which I know can be like, was for me the most intimidating part, was finding a project and then learning the science and going into it. So for me and my team, how we kind of focused in on that was, where did our interests lie, and what are some problems currently going on that, we think we want to address. Ultimately, we concluded, that spandex was good in a lot of ways, but really harmful for the environment. So, could we turn this around and, make it more biodegradable or regenerative or circular in some capacity? And so then, I mean, just really, you can kind of dip your toes into the research, and we just started looking at, elastic proteins, or we went to nature.com as a really good resource to kind of just start your discovery. And then you'll sort of start to find other articles or other research that goes along with it. And you can kind of just dive down into a rabbit hole. I would also say feel free to reach out to any professors or doctors who have written any articles. A lot of the times, if you just ask, they'll grant you access to the research if you share what kind of project you're working on. And just realize that, it may take a little bit longer for you to understand some of these complex topics, because a lot of us are, not studying biology or chemistry or physics, but scientific language is meant to be understood. And, there's a lot of resources within the biodesign community to help you decipher some academic jargon.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. And in particular, I think, you know, um, beginning at least defining the problem, and, as Mitchell, as you were saying, like, what is the problem and where are your passions, and like what resources you have access to. And I think being as specific as you can, because it's very daunting when you look at the whole world and all of the problems and all of the resources and all of the sciences, nobody could possibly wrap their heads around it. So I think being as specific as you can, And then within that, you know, again, going back to the asking questions part, I think it's really like ask your network. If you don't have it, again, like I think the Biodesign Challenge has a lot of them. And, you know, of course, Google has a lot of them. But, you know, I think even in the beginning, anyone that you know that has any knowledge of any kind of topic, I think it's fine to ask. Like, I mean, I know I, you know, barely knew how to decipher, like, is this a physics question? Is this biology, chemistry, engineering? I have no idea, but at least somebody can point you in a direction where you can narrow down once again and really delve into the details, as Mitchell was saying as well. Yeah.
I think I also want to, that's a great way of putting it. Like that's how I would have put it too, is I think, you know, it is a project that you're working on for a while. And in the case of both of these two, like you may continue on after being a student, right? So it should be something that is within your community, that Tessa was saying, like, that is part of your passion, because you are going to work with it, right? So you start somewhere that means something to you, means something to the community that you're a part of. And then, you know, I'm sure in Evie's class, you all, and many of you Biodesign Challenge students out there are reading scientific journals, right? To help you figure out the science as well. There are people that write those, right? So, and their names are usually on there. So, and these are people that are usually very willing to speak with you, to give you 15 minutes to talk about the research that they're doing. So sometimes if you can't decipher some of the jargon, they can speak to you and like help you decipher it and help you understand it better. So having phone calls or Zoom calls always will be helpful in your research. And then, you know, if you are someone who's interested in biodesign overall and just want to learn more things, we have a lot of public options too for you to learn more. So if you check out our website, there's resources of, like, if you're someone who is in the field of architecture and want to look at biodesign, we have readings and resources and people that you could look at around that. And then we also have our magazine as well. So biodesign.org is our community members who are experts in their field, whether that's food or microbiology or architecture. They talk about their work as well. And that's even more people that you can kind of tap. So, and Evie said GenSpace as well. Yeah, we have local labs all over the world that you could look at. So here in New York, we have GenSpace and a few other community labs, and they're always open to having more people in. Well, right now it's online, but when the pandemic is over, they're always open to speak to more people. So there are a lot of resources out there. And on that note, I'm also going to share screen one more time so you can see just our credentials. So if you ever want to reach out to us, these are our Instagram handles or Twitter handles, our websites. Feel free to come see us. Thank you everyone for talking, for asking questions. Thank you, Tessa and Mitchell, for spending so much time with me today, talking about circularity, about fashion, about biodesign. There's so much more we could talk about, and hopefully we will at some point again. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Evie, do you have any other?
No, I think that was really great. And I really wish we had all day to talk more about this. So yeah, thanks so much to Mitchell and Tessa for sharing your experience, and for Veena for moderating everything. For those that are, listening, watching to the recording, please reach out to any of us for more information. Everyone would be happy to talk with you more about these topics.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Take care.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.